My chief mechanic has just come to join us. He is full of useful information when it comes to how to ride and how to maintain your bike. He's been a biker all his life, so he does like to help out now and again. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is another video in the series of biker tips for beginners. Today we're going to have a quick look at doing pre-ride checks on this Suzuki Bandit. I'm using the Bandit because it's unfaired, so it's easier for you to see things on the video as I talk about them, but the checks that you would do are exactly the same on any bike. The sorts of things that we look at on a pre-ride check are tyres, oil level, chain, and then we're going to check the lights as well. So we're going to start off looking at the tyres. The minimum tyre tread depth in the UK is 1mm, and most tyres, if not all tyres these days, have little wear indicators moulded in to the bottom of the tread, which will show you the minimum legal tread depth. They can be quite tricky to see. As you can see, there's plenty of tread on this rear tyre. Normally I wouldn't recommend running your tyres right down to that limit, especially if you ride in the wet, because it does affect the ability of the tyre to dispel water at that kind of tread depth, but it is the legal minimum. Also, front tyre is fine. In terms of checking tyre pressures, I find a quick squeeze is enough for a pre-ride check. You should be checking your tyre pressures properly every week if you use your bike regularly, or once a month if you don't. I really recommend one of these for checking your tyre pressure. They're made by Oxford. They've got a nice 90-degree end on them, which makes getting into the valve stems on bike tyres much easier, bike wheels much easier, especially on front wheels where you've got twin discs. And they've got a nice big dial on them. Actually check your tyre pressures once a week if you ride almost every day, or once a month if you don't ride so often. If you don't ride so often and your bike stood in the garage for a long time, check your tyre pressures properly before you get on it and ride it. So the next thing we're going to do is check our chain tension. I've done a separate video on how to actually adjust your chain tension, but for a pre-ride all we're going to do is we're going to check that the tension is within specification by pushing up on the chain in between the front sprocket and the rear sprocket. And what you're looking for is 25 to 30mm of free play on that chain. Manufacturer specifications vary slightly, but that's a good general rule of thumb. So the next thing we're going to do is check the lights. So we'll start off with the headlights, then we'll check the indicators, and then the brake lights. So pop the lights on. So this is side light, tail light, and number plate lights, headlight dipped beam, headlight main beam, and we're going to check indicators front and back, left, and right. Check our horn, and then we're going to check brake lights. So one tip for checking brake lights, so if you're standing here you can't see your rear brake light, if you just put your hand behind your rear brake light, pull the front lever, you see the reflection in your hand. Just the rear lever, again, see the reflection in your hand, you know your brake light is working fine. The next thing we're going to do is just check the oil level on the bike. For that your bike does need to be vertical. That means that it either needs to be on your centre stand, on a paddock stand, or you need to get a friend or someone to help you just hold it vertical while you check the oil level. On most bikes, on the side of the engine you will see a little glass window called a sight glass, and it will have a lower mark and an upper mark of some description on it. They may be labelled, they may not be, but normally you will see that there will be a little mark next to that little window. What you're looking for is for the oil to be between those two marks, ideally at the upper mark. You can see on this bike the oil's actually getting close to the lower mark, so we do need to top it up. If you do need to top your bike up, just make sure you use the correct oil for your bike. Next thing we're going to check is brakes. So obviously we can't check brakes fully with the bike stationary, but all we're going to do is just make sure there's not any obvious leaks or issues with anything. So pull on the front brake lever, make sure it doesn't touch the bar there. Make sure we don't have any obvious leaks of brake fluid at any of the joints or any obvious damage on the hoses. The same with the rear brake. Again, just making sure it feels nice and solid. Again, make sure we haven't got any obvious leaks. I always recommend when you first jump on your bike and just start moving at a slow speed, just gently pull on your brakes and make sure they work. The next thing we're going to have a look at is suspension. On your front forks, all you need to check is to make sure that you don't have any oil leaking from anywhere. Your forks are full of oil. It stops you just bouncing around on the springs, provides damping. Over time the seals wear and they start to leak. If they are leaking, take your bike to your nearest motorcycle workshop and get them to change the fork seals for you. The last thing we're going to do is just have a look and make sure we haven't got any fluid leaks. Now, the Bandit is an oil-cooled engine, so we don't have any coolant on this engine. If you've got a water-cooled bike, normally they're quite tricky to check the coolant level on. For example, on my Blackbird, the coolant top-up point is behind this fairing, and the actual overflow reservoir is under the seat. So what you're looking for with a water-cooled bike is just make sure there's not any puddles under it where you've left it, which would be the sign of a water leak. On an oil-cooled bike, there isn't any water. The engine's actually cooled by a combination of air passing over the cylinders, which is why they're ribbed, and over an oil cooler. So what you need to do is just check for any leaks. The easiest way to do that is to just have a look underneath your bike and see if there are any obvious drips of any fluid of any kind. If there are, it might indicate that you're starting to have an issue. So that's all dry. So that's all you need to know about how to do some pre-ride checks on your bike. Hopefully you found it useful. If you have, give it a thumbs up, leave us a comment below, don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back with more hints and tips for beginners very soon. Thanks very much for watching.